Hi everyone, my name is Naomi, aka Nifty Nomi, and welcome to my channel, Be That Business. I'm a Canadian bookkeeper and a new business educator, and I help entrepreneurs look under the hood to see how it all works. I'm fighting the good fight against double work and against giving CRA more money than you have to. This is the second in a series of 3 Sit With Me videos. First, I shared a video on how to create a special GST/HST tax rate on QuickBooks Online that only claims 50% of the GST/HST credits on meals expense entries. This second video will share how I review the GST/HST on my QuickBooks Online file as I prepare to file it with CRA. The third video, I will share how I file that GST/HST online with CRA and how I pay it. Let's get started. So what we have here is just a fake sample company in QuickBooks Online. It's one that I created with using some source documents that I created for a tutorial. And the menu might look a little different than yours. QuickBooks tends to update and change their app quite often, I find, and it kind of depends on when you start your file. Sometimes those changes will or won't be applied to the file that you started. I was quite surprised when I saw this update when I just made this trial version a few weeks ago. The menu is completely different than what I'm used to, but it's just the menu that changed. The guts of the QuickBooks is still the same, so I can still show you how I review my QuickBooks Online. So whether this menu is the same as yours or not, the actual reports and interfaces that we get to will all be the same. So the first thing that I actually do is go to the profit and loss report. So here, and under reports, find reports, and then you'll find profit and loss. So in this fake company, the person actually started their business in September of 2021. So that's when they registered for HST. That's when this transaction started. So let's go to September 2021. And at first they were set on annual filing, and then in 2022 they switched to quarterly filing. It's a fake company. That's the story I made up. And then I like to look at it as a monthly review by month. So I said monthly up here, and then I had to hit run report. And it's on accrual, always on accrual. And I can see here, there's no income for September. That makes sense. She didn't actually open until October. And you can see there's no rent expense in September. So that's okay. She didn't start renting until October. But I mean, when I look at it from a monthly point of view, I like to see if there's any holes missing. You know, I'm okay with her just paying the $60 for her business license, you know. I think I need to add some more fake documents for cost of goods sold, but that's just me being a fake making a fake company. But again, just looking over it, making sure it's reasonable. You can do another analysis another time about the profitability, but this is just to make sure we haven't missed anything. Like sometimes I'll see that there's no utilities. Like for example, the October utilities are billed in November. The bill date is like November 5th or something. But when you're looking at your 3 months, if there's a month without utilities, it's like, take a closer look at that, see if you've missed putting anything in. So that's the first step that I do. And then I keep in mind what the total sales are, $27,493.35. So on another screen, I usually have 2 screens because I like 2 screens. I have 3 actually, but 2 screens helps me to see 2 things at once, but I'll open another tab here to keep that profit and loss there. Now I'm going to go to taxes, and you'll notice that because this is the first time this fake person is filing, and it's set to quarterly on QuickBooks right now, it doesn't show me that September to December 2021. But that's because I haven't started using this GST/HST filing tool yet, so that's okay. I can change that when I hit Prepare Return. So I'm going to hit Prepare Return, and I'm going to change, I'm just going to change these dates to the ones that I want to cover. September to December, there it is. And now we can see that the sales here are $27,493.35. $27,493.35. Excellent. That makes me happy. I know things are generally going in the right direction. If you want to know, like if they're different, and you want to know, well, how do I see why they're different? Let me show you how to do that. And as you can see, I can't click on this right now, can I? I can click on the HST collected, and I can collect on the HST paid on expenses, or I call it ITCs, input tax credits. But I can't click on this 27, and I really want to see what's behind it. So you can click on that by going to the report view of this screen. Let me close this. And instead of hitting prepare return, I'm going to drop down and I'm going to say view summary, which is kind of a very similar screen, but it's a report. And we know with our reports, now we can click on that. Now it says 35 because I haven't changed the dates, just to illustrate that this is the case. We'll change it back to this period of time. You've always got to hit run report. Don't forget that. And there we go. Now we can see the 27,493. We can click on that. And now we can see all of the transactions that are making up those sales amounts. Another thing that you can do to compare why they might be different, I know they're the same in this example, but let's see, another way is if you click on this 27,000 on that profit and loss report. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the columns. So first of all, I'm going to get rid of that split because it always gets in my way and I'm annoyed by it. And I'm going to add the tax code and I'm going to add the tax amount like that. And let me just click somewhere else. I wish there was an OK. But there isn't. But now we can see the tax code that's applied to each of these invoices and the tax amount. And so this is a way that you can see why this number might be different than the number on your other screen. Like maybe it's out of scope, which means to QuickBooks, don't even consider this anything to do with income to be reported on your GST return. That's like just out of the scope of the GST return. And let me just sort of expand the transaction time a bit to show a little bit more activity. Hit run report. So we can see, for example, there's this grant income deposit here that's marked as exempt. And there's other HSTs. So this is just a way for you to see why it might be different, what you might be missing. It's just a way to investigate. So I'm going to go back to my report summary on this page, and then over here I just gotta go the long way back to prepare return. So the next thing that I look at, so I've looked at the sales, and if those sales don't seem right to you, some things that you might want to check is you might want to check your unpaid. Let me open a new tab here. Lots of tabs. You might want to check your unpaid invoices. So if you've got invoices out to clients that are unpaid and you look at that report and like, hold on, Jane paid, right? Maybe you've got an income double entered twice. That does happen a lot when people are learning the bank feed. They don't quite understand how it works. And instead of making a payment to an invoice they've created, they're just like, that's income, and they'll put it in twice. So one way to check your accounts receivable is to go to new menu, reports. And I'm going to go to open invoices under who owes you, open invoices. So you can see here that there's no unpaid invoices, but if there were, then that would be, I'd be like, yes, so-and-so didn't pay or they did pay, and that would help me investigate. Another thing that you want to make sure is that you've reconciled the bank. So the bank feed, that's not reconciling the bank, that's just matching the bank information to actual transactions in QuickBooks. So that's not a bank reconciliation. So it's usually under accounting on the other menu, but here we go, reconcile. And this is where you would go in and make sure that there's no white line, like no things that haven't cleared. So for example, here is, well, hello. Here's an example of a bill payment that didn't clear the bank. So did it actually happen? Here's an e-transfer. So if it's white, if it doesn't have a blue check mark, it means it's not cleared. So maybe you've got some double entries in and you want to make sure that, you know, an e-transfer should have cleared, right? Like what's going on there. On the other hand, if you have a check that's written that hasn't cleared the bank, well, that makes sense. Anyway, so if that income doesn't seem right, then there's some places to look to see if you maybe have double entered anything. Another thing that you can check to make sure there's no double entered income or something that's gone weird or awry is you just want to make sure there's no checks that are ready for deposit that just haven't gone into the bank yet. So maybe you've used undeposited funds, you don't quite know what that is. So a couple of places to look at that. I'm going to go new, bank deposit, for example, and there are no checks here to be deposited. So if there are checks that I've marked as go to undeposited funds but not yet to the bank, there's a section above the add funds of all the different checks for me to check off, and there's none here. So this is another good thing that makes me happy that everything is the way it should be and I haven't missed anything or double entered any income. Another place to check that, let's go back to reports and we go to the balance sheet. And there is an undeposited funds right here. So you can see that the balance in undeposited funds is 0. So if there's a number in there and it's not like, and you're like, what's that? Maybe you marked an invoice as paid and that it was paid to undeposited funds and it's ready to go into the bank with the bank deposit, but you just haven't entered it yet. And then maybe the bank feed came and you entered some extra income for fun because you want to give CRA all the money you have. Yeah, I see that a lot too. So it's just another place to check to make sure that your GST HST is all ready to go and you haven't double entered anything. So we were like, okay, that makes sense to me. I'm happy. I've looked under the hood and seen what happened. So in this fake company here, for this quarter, she's not selling, or this period of time, she's not selling any 0 rated supplies and she's not shipping anything to other provinces. She's in Ontario in this example. So because nothing weird is not weird, but anomalous is going on, like selling honey or shipping to the States or shipping to a different province with a different rate, then this HST collected of 3,000, that theoretically should be 13% of the 27. So let's just check that that's a reasonable thing that happened. And if it is different, then again, we're looking at those tax codes, or maybe like it's fine if it's different if you're selling honey or you're shipping to a different province or something like that. So it's going to multiply by 0.13. So I took this 27,000 and I multiplied it on my calculator by 0.13 to get 13%. I get 3,574 and 13 cents, which is not 06 cents. But she has like this card machine that rounds, maybe the penny rounding was off because she has a store with lots of people buying. So a few pennies off makes sense to me. But basically that is 13% of the sales, and she hasn't done anything that would make it any different for her case. So that's reasonable to me. So here's another thing that I checked. And again, that's something that you can click on and look at the details of. So that's helpful. So the next line we want to think about is the input tax credits. Now that's the HST that you have paid on business related expenses. Okay. And what's interesting here is if you're registered for GST HST, you're a tax collector. You collected $3,500 from people to give to CRA on CRA's behalf. But instead of giving them $3,000, you're only giving them $1,000. And that is because you get back the HST that you've paid on your expenses if you're registered to collect it. So if you're registered for GST HST only, that's when you get this money back. If this fake person wasn't registered to collect GST HST, first of all, they wouldn't have collected $3,500, right? But they also wouldn't be able to get $2,500 from CRA. Like that $2,000 would just be expense. So you can see that even though she's paying $1,000, she's coming out ahead. She's saved $2,500. Now, what if she's purchased like a big asset? Or what if her sales were really crappy and she didn't really sell very much? Does that mean that the HST she paid on her business expenses would be higher than what she collected? Yes. And does that mean she would get a refund? Yes, she gets it back. And that's just how the GST HST works. So another thing that I like to do before I file, especially if it's somebody else's, but I look at this number to see what's in there. So let's click it, see what's in there. And what we can see is a list of all of the ITCs that make up that number. And I just sort of skim through and make sure there's no big numbers. Okay, so that's a bigger number. It makes sense. It's on the rent. So that's the HST on the rent, not of her home, but of the garden center that she's renting. And you might notice that I have like this half of HST claimable. That's on a restaurant. The memo, meeting with the client Crystal Ball. The client's name is Crystal. It's a fun case study. And you can see it's only claiming half. Now I set that up myself, like that's a Naomi thing. You can you can only claim 50% of your meals expenses and associated HST. So only 50% of the HST. Not in all cases. I have a whole other video about that. And that's, I put a link to that in the comment section. But you can see it's only claiming half of the HST. It's only a couple of bucks, which is why some people sometimes skip the adjustment step, but technically you can only claim half. And creating this rate group, again, that's what the topic is of the previous video that I did. And I usually look here to make sure there's nothing like insurance. So if there's no HST on insurance, there might be like provincial sales tax, but that's not CRA, like that's not GST, that's not HST. So you can't claim it. So no insurance is in here. Nobody's trying to claim HST on bank charges or loan payments. Lease payments, yes, but not loan payments. So no HST on loan payments. So people just sometimes assume there's HST on everything, and there's not. So I just make sure nobody's made any typos, and if it's your own, you can make sure there's no big numbers, and if there are, you know what they are, and you're like, I feel good about that. That's not a typo. So let's go back. Another thing that you want to check too, to make sure you've got all of them in or you haven't double entered any. Again, it's the same idea. You want to make sure your bank is reconciled. Let's go to reports. Business overview, reports might be a different place on your menu, but it kind of, the guts looks the same once you get there. And here's where we look at our unpaid bills right here. So we'll click that. And this is a list of all the bills that are unpaid. And you just want to like make sure that, sorry, the foreign amounts there because I was showing USD, whatever. It's just my fake company. But yeah, so what you can see here is if any of these are old, right? Like maybe you've got something double entered. I don't know. These are the bills that you might have entered but didn't put payments to. But if you look at these are all current. It makes sense. Nothing jumps out as weird or odd. So we've sort of nosed around and looked everywhere. One extra place that you might want to look is your balance sheet. Like if there's anything weird going on there, and you have any questions about what it is, something also to look at before you file the HST. Just if it's somebody else's file, you want to make sure they didn't mess up on it. So there's one more thing that I want to do before I file this, one more thing that you can check, that I especially check if it's somebody else's file and they're asking me to sort of review things and make sure it looks okay. So I went to reports and I went to the balance sheet, and I'm just going to change these dates to match the filing date here, September to December 31st, run report. And what we can see down here is that the GST payable shows $1,048.57, which is this number, $1,048.57 as of December 31st. So that makes me feel good. If it's different, that would be something to speak to a pro advisor about, but it just makes my heart happy that everything's the way it's supposed to be. And I'm going to show you something else, what happens to that balance sheet after we file the GST HST. All right, so that's what we have right now is we've checked the sales and it makes sense. We've checked the HST collected and it makes sense. We've checked the input tax credits and it makes sense. And so that's the amount that's due. So the next step that I would do, and I'm going to do it in the next video, is then I would open up, I'd keep this up, I would open up CRA, my business, like the internet, go to CRA, my business account. I would then I would file these numbers and the lines correspond. You just would need 101, 105, and you need 108. So those are the lines that you need. If you've made any installments, I'll show that in a second as well. You'd put that in as well. And then once I have filed and hit file and confirmed and printed that confirmation on CRA, then I do it here too. And I make sure that the filing date, this is when the journal entry goes in to to empty out the bucket. I'm going to show that too. So I'm just going to say that she filed this, for example, some people put it on December 31st on the last day. You can do that. That's fine. I'll show you what happens and what's going on there. But let's pretend that she filed it on January 25th for argument's sake. And then she'll file it with CRA, and then then you mark, yes, I filed it. Mark is filed. It's like, oh, are you sure? Like, it's going to shut this down and take a snapshot. And I'm like, oh, and it also says if you do something after, like if you predate something for this period, it'll show up in the exception report. I'm going to show that next. So I've finished showing how to review GST, HST, but I'm just going to show a few extra things about the filing tool that you might be interested in seeing. So I'm going to hit continue. So here's the thing, you can't enter a payment towards your GST, HST filed from the bank feed. Like there's not much you can do some with the bank. Like for GST, HST, do all the transactions away from the bank feed and then match. Don't add. You can't. You've got to use this GST, HST interface in order to record all of those like the payments towards GST, HST. Now I don't know when she paid it in my fake company right now, so I'm going to record the payment later. This isn't not actually paying it with CRA. This is recording the payment with CRA. So we'll say we paid that later. So here we are. You can see now that it's filed. It's gone down below, and the next period is up to file, up to bat. And so if we were to record a payment, we would do that from this screen here. So you can't enter a payment from the bank feed. People rely heavily on the bank feed. Don't rely on the bank feed heavily. If you're going to do any payments to CRA, you want to enter them in this interface, and then you want to match them on the bank feed. And we would record the payment for this period that we just filed right here. And maybe you only paid 1,000, right? So, and let's say you paid it on January 25th, say. So we'll put that. Maybe you paid it February 25th. Just making numbers up now just to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to hit record payment. So you can see it's not fully paid. It's got a little exclamation. Oh, you still owe $50, you know, so there it is. So let's just quickly go back to that balance sheet and show you now what the balance sheet looks like now that we have filed it. So we can see that the current period up to March 31st is showing 1557.47. And so I'm just going to refresh this. All right, so it's still going September to December. It's still got that number that we had filed, but we had dated that as filed January. So if I move this now to that March 31st, right there. Now these two accounts, there's two accounts now. First of all, there's this 1557.47, and that matches what the next quarter is, because I made this balance sheet go to March 31st. And also there's this suspense. Like, what's this suspense? Suspense is how much is filed and owing to CRA. So we filed that 1,400 and then we paid 1,000, right? Well, it was one thing, you know, you saw it, you were there. So this 48.27, that's how much we still have owing on this amount right here, 48.27. And this 15.57, that is the amount that we are owing for the current period. So you can see that all of the transactions of going in and out. So when we click into that, you can see this is where all of those transactions for the GST, HST payable, all of the bills and expenses and invoices, that's where it all goes. And then on January 25th when we file, that's why some people filing it December 31st, marking it as paid then. That's an idea, but we marked it as January 25th. And what you can see here is that's the filed sales tax of 1048.57 coming out. So that's how the ledgers work on the balance sheet. So now let's pretend that we've filed this and it's January 25th and our accountant calls us and they say, hey, are your numbers ready for 2021? Can I go ahead and prepare the income tax? So the income tax hasn't been prepared yet. Once the income tax is prepared for the year, you lock the year. You don't want to put an expense in there after it's been used for income taxes, because then it gets missed. You don't want to miss expenses. Don't pay CRA more than you have to, right? But in this scenario, the income taxes for 2021 have not been filed. The period is not locked. You have to do that yourself up in settings. And so you're like, oh, wait, I have a McGroot's bill here that I haven't entered. So it wasn't paid, you didn't realize it, but you just reconciled the January bank account, and you're like, oh, look at that, I missed this. We claim our incomes and expenses the date that they're incurred, not the date that they're paid. That's called accrual accounting, and that's the best way to do it. So you say, I've got this bill here, I haven't entered it, can I enter it before you prepare my income tax? And the accountant says, sure. And you're like, wait, I've already filed the GST, what do I do? And they're like, don't worry, put the bill into QuickBooks. QuickBooks is going to carry forward that unclaimed credit to the next time you file. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to carry forward unclaimed credits up to 4 years or 3 years or something. You've got time. But at least you could put it in the next quarter. So they're like, go ahead and put the bill in. I'm going to show you what that looks like right now. So we're going to go new bill. And let's put in McGroot's Landscape Supply, and let's date this December 20th, 2021, and just test so I know it's fake. And then, I don't know, $7.75. So we can see here that this is for a period that we filed. And if we go save and close, you can see, oh, wait, it's got a message. So many messages. And it's saying, you've already filed this period. Just so you know, we're going to bring forward the missed credit into the current period. Okay? And you say, okay. Or maybe you're like, oh, wait, I meant to say December 2022. I don't know, like it helps catch that. So now, let me go ahead and hit prepare return for the next quarter so you can see what that looks like. Now we have a new column. And this new column is the exceptions. And what the exceptions are is the crap you missed from the last time you filed, or the crap you changed from the last time you filed that QuickBooks is carrying forward into the next filing. By the way, if there's a substantial change in your sales or GST, HST collected, CRA wants you to amend the GST, HST return. That's technically what they want you to do. But definitely if you just missed a credit, they don't want you to amend. They like, if it's just a missed credit, just bring it into the next one. That's what they want you to do. And you can see here that the input tax credits is $2,631 plus the 100. It's now $2,731. And we can click on this and see what changed. Oh, look, it's the bill we entered. Or, oh, look, I entered an invoice at X and then now it says Y. Or I changed what this bill said after I'd filed. And it tracks all of these exceptions. So that's important to know, especially if you get audited or reviewed. Let me show you a bit more. So if you get audited or reviewed, you want to give a list of everything that you claimed in that filing specifically for that period. So let's drop this down and we're going to go to View GST HST Detail right there. And what this GST HST Detail is, this is the sales that you claimed and the HST on those sales that you claimed and all of the credits that you claimed for that period. You'll notice that the McGroot's one isn't in there because this is not a live report. This is a snapshot in time report of what you filed for CRA. And if there are exceptions, you're going to have to click the exceptions report. So let's see, there'll be exceptions on this one. That's the report that you would, it's not filed, so it's not technically a report, but it would look like a snapshot in time when we filed. And I got to go back, big old circle. So we're going to go here. And if I say GST, HST detail on this one, again, it's only showing me January to March. Where is that McGroot's one from December that it's carrying forward? Well, scroll down to the bottom, big red exception report, click here. So I just wanted to point out that if you get that message after you've filed a period, it's okay. It carries it forward like this. But again, if you filed your year, it's okay between quarters. But if you've locked your year, don't put an expense in there, it'll get missed. One more thing about the GST, HST, if you have an annual filing and you owed more than, I think it's more than $3,000, I forget the number, for that GST filing for the annual year, CRA wants you to pay installments on next year's GST, HST, just so it's not a giant bill at the end because they know you spend what's in your pocket. And if you do an installment, the way that you enter an installment payment is new installment. And this is where you can put an installment to a future, let's say, quarter. So maybe we're making it here on March 1st. It would technically be due April 30th for the year, but I'm just doing this to show you what it looks like. And I'm just going to put in, 500, record installment. So now you can see now this balance is only $956. And if we hit prepare return, there is that installment of $500 right there for you to put onto your GST, HST filing. So there are a few things that I sort of check and look at to make sure that my GST, HST is ready for filing. Some of the things that I sort of check on other people's QuickBooks to make sure that they haven't put things in a way that they weren't understanding. And also sort of a crack under the hood there for you to see where you can see what those numbers are. Sometimes just filing blindly what the numbers are and just hoping they're right isn't a good feeling. So this way, oh look, that's where I can see the detail. That's where I can get the reports. That's what QuickBooks is doing. That's what exceptions are. Hopefully you found this video helpful. The next step is to file the GST, HST online with CRA. And so that's going to be my next video. So I'm going to file it online with CRA, and I'm also going to go ahead and pay it online with CRA. If you found this video useful, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'm on Instagram at BeThatBusiness. You can tweet at me. I'm at NiftyNomi on Twitter, and I'm also at NiftyNomi on Twitch and TikTok. And you can find resources and courses about running a Canadian business on my website, naomiwilkins.ca. And there you can also subscribe to my newsletter. It's created to be interesting and useful. The Be That Business newsletter is a twice monthly email, one on the 14th of every month and one on the 29th of every month, just to remind you of what might be due the next day, and also to give some hacks and resources and some upcoming due dates for the month ahead. The video today was recorded in beautiful Gananoque, Ontario. Thanks for watching, and get out there and be that business that thrives.